Okay, so this is section 6.2, and we're looking at these graphs, 4 graphs, and they want us to match each equation with a graph above. So we're going to match the equations with the graphs above. How do we do that? Well, I could give you tricks and things, but I just don't think tricks are a good way to remember things. I think it'll stick with you better if you just go ahead and crank them out. So let me see, what am I going to do? Yeah, so I'm just going to grab this first equation, bring it up here, and I'm just going to graph it. So I'm going to go y equals -2 to the minus x. Now I'm just going to go through the steps, and I'm just going to take the equations one at a time. And I'm just going to graph them and see which one's which. Now, how do you graph it? Well, you just make a little XY table. Remember what we learned about, this is exponential functions. Right now we're in chapter 6. Chapter 6 is exponential functions, meaning x is up here in power. X in power, meaning it's an exponent, right? That's why these are called exponential functions. X is an exponent, okay? And so how do you graph them? Well, you plug in an x value that makes the power equal 0. That's a good way to start. So I'm just going to plug in 0. You know, if you put a 0 right there, the power is 0. And so what does y equal then? Y will equal -2 to the 0, or -0 if you want, but whatever. -0 is still just 0. And what does that equal? That equals -1, not regular 1. Do you remember that? Remember, 0 powers turn things into 1, but that 0 power only has power over the 2. The negative sitting in the front is a spectator. He's not. Now, if he was in parentheses, then that would be +1, because he would turn the whole -2 into +1. Do you see that difference? So it's really important to be clear. A 0 power, or any power for that matter, who does he have power on? Well, he only has power on the number he's immediately next to, not even the sign in the front, unless there's parentheses, which make him have power over the whole thing. Does that make sense? So that comes out -1. That negative sign is separate from the power stuff. So -1, so over 0 down 1. And then you just add 1. Let's plug in 1. What's that going to be? -2 to the -1. I just plugged in 1 now. Now, do you remember what a negative power does? I mean, let me write the rules up here for you. The power rules. Power or exponent rules that you really need to know. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Anything to a negative power is 1 over that to a positive power. Remember, negative powers, they're unhappy, so to speak. They make the thing flip. The analogy I make is like if you're unhappy at your job, you're negative. You're at your job, you're unhappy, you're negative. And then if you jump to the new job, then you become positive, then you become happy. That's what a negative power is. It's unhappy where it's at. It wants to jump to the other side of the fraction. And then after it jumps, it becomes positive. So this is going to equal negative. That negative in the front just sits there. 1 over 2 to the +1. See how that negative power jumped to the bottom and became a +1. And so that's -1/2. So we're looking for a graph that goes over 0 down 1, that's right here, and over 1 down 1/2, that's right here. See it? It's the blue one. See how the blue graph is the only graph that has those 2 points? Over 1 down 1/2, over 0 down 1. We good so far? try the next one. So on the next one, I'm gonna grab this next one. I'm gonna go y equals 2 to the minus x. So I started with this one. Now I'm doing this one. What am I gonna do? Same old thing. X, y table, start with 0. Y equals 2 to the minus 0, which is just 2 to the 0, which is 1 over 0 up 1. And then you just add 1, plug in 1, 2 to the minus 1. This is 2 to the minus x. 2 to the minus 1, what is that? That's a half, right? Yeah, it's 1 over 2 to the positive 1, which is just a half, right? Negative powers are, let me write that again, are unhappy where they're at. They jump to the other side of the fraction, then they become happy. They jump to the new job, then they're happy. 1 over 2 to the 1, which is 1 over 2. So which graph is over 0 up 1? That's right there. And then over 1, so it's over 0 up 1. And over 1 up a half. Right there. Oops. Over 1 up a half. It's the red graph. The red graph has the points over 0 up 1 and over 1 up a half. Next, number 3. So, y equals minus 2 to the x. Let's make an xy chart. You know the deal. Plug in 0. Y equals, let's get that a little bit. Y equals minus 2 to the 0, which is minus 1, right? Again, that 0 power only affects the 2. The minus just sits there, over 0 down 1. Oops, what am I doing? And then plug in 1. So we get y equals minus 2 to the 1. That's just minus 2, right? 1 power doesn't do anything. Just minus 2. Which point is over 0 down 1? It's right here. And over 1 down 2, it's right here, isn't it? That's the orange graph. Now we've only got one left. It's got to be the green graph, but let's see it nevertheless. So getting back to it, y equals, grab it right here, 2 to the x, xy chart. I'm going to plug in 0, y equals 2 to the 0, which is 1. Plug in 1, y equals 2 to the 1, which is 2. Over 0 up 1, right there. Over 1 up 2, right there. Sure enough, that's the green graph. So there we go. So there's how we graph those 4 exponential functions. So all you got to do to graph an exponential function is you plug in the x value that makes the power 0. In this case, that's just 0. All these just have an x or a negative x in the power zone. So you just plug in 0, and then you plug in 1. But you got to know the power rules. That is, anything to the 0 power is 1. And anything to a negative power, it jumps to the denominator, and then the power becomes positive. But you've also got to know when a power has power over something or not, like right here, or right here, I should say, minus 2 to the 0. That 0 does not affect that negative in the front. It only affects the thing it's immediately next to. That's why it stays -1. And so there we go. There we're able to graph the 4 graphs.